So welcome to today's session, which is on the global cultural competency. And before we move into the nuances of the session and the hygiene pointers, I would like to take a pause over here and welcome none other than Dr. Aikina Finch. Uh, uh, can you please, Dr. Finch, could you please turn on your camera so that we can pin you? Yeah, hello. Nandini, can you pin her? Yeah. So Dr. Aikina Finch is the Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging at the International Coaching Federation, driving global DEIB strategies for the coaching community. With over 8 years as a professional coach, she's a PCC coach and specializes in business, life, and social media coaching. As an author, she has co-authored 12 books, published her solo book, Motivation Ignited. As a speaker and educator, she has delivered TEDx talks, workshops, and trainings on DEIB, coaching, and technology. Very passionate about empowering individuals and organizations, her mission is to inspire and equip others to create meaningful impact through education, coaching, and DEIB initiatives. Welcome, Dr. Finch.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for having me and inviting me today. It was definitely a pleasure. I will just be joining in like everyone else, but thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you. Thank you. So as we move now to the beginning of the session, I would like to start by saying that today's session will receive 0.75 CCUs and 0.75 RDs. We will post a claim form towards the end of the session to claim your CCUs. Now you have 2 days to fill up the claim form until 7th of December. And participants who are eligible will receive their CCUs by 30th of December. Allow me to introduce you to the hosting team in a quick way. My name is Preeti and I'm your host for today. With me in my hosting team are Anne William Dias and Nandini Agaskar. I lead the DIB vertical for the ICF Mumbai Charter chapter, and we have Anne, who is an active member of the DIB steering team. She will support us with the Q&A segment. We also have Nandini, who helps us with admin and tech, and she works very closely with the ICF Mumbai Charter Chapter Management Committee. Some hygiene pointers before we begin the session is keep yourselves off camera and please be on mute to avoid any disruption in the background that may be caused. During the session, if you have any question that pops up in your mind, please write it in the chat box and we'll curate it, collect it, and we will present it for the larger audience and for Kashmira Mody's inputs at the end of the session. We request all participants that once the presentation is done, we will invite you to turn your cameras on for a group photo, post which we will launch a feedback poll. Now, for those of you who wish to claim the CCUs, the link for the same will be posted also after the feedback poll. And please remember to write your full name as you wish it to appear in your CCU certificate and the correct email ID for us to post the certificate to you. Coming to today's topic. Oh yeah, another important thing is after the end of the session, we will invite you to stay on for 10 minutes for networking and sharing in case we are not exceeding the session time. Coming to today's topic, which is global cultural competency. This is an ICF Global DEIB initiative. Empower yourself to build authentic client-coach relationships and broaden your reach across geographies. Today's expert speaker is none other than our own Kashmira Mody. Kashmira has very graciously agreed to share her knowledge and wisdom on DEIB with us. A small brief about Kashmira. Kashmira Mody, an ICF PCC and former partner of DEIB with the Mumbai chapter, has been a business coach for 18 years and works with clients across the globe to generate massive success and significance powered by the unique values, vision, and zones of genius. She is also a certified counselor, yoga and meditation teacher, and whole health coach. So let's all get ready to be inspired by her wisdom and insights today. Over to you, Kashmira. We eagerly await you. Let's hear you on.
Thank you, Preeti. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. And it's really wonderful to see Dr. Finch here and all of you. So I want to start, before I turn on the presentation slides, I just want to take a moment and, reiterate, it's called the Global Cultural Competency Training, and it is a global initiative from the ICF. And we have actually taken all the way till December to roll it out. But the idea is that every chapter in the world and every coach associated with ICF is exposed to this training. So I really welcome everybody here, regardless of the chapters you're affiliated to or the countries from which you coach. This is a training that I hope that you will find very relevant. So I'm going to start by sharing my deck, and then let's see where we can go with this. Just a second. Yeah. Can you see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So, let's start with some commitments. And this is also standard protocol when we do ICF trainings. So things that you might be familiar with, but I wanted to say it one more time. This is a safe space for everybody. So all the sharing you do here remains in this circle. And yes, we do have a video recording of this so that you're aware that everything that's happening here is being recorded. Two, as you come into this training, to model curiosity, to have an open mind, to respect all other viewpoints that might be shared during this presentation and during this session, and then allowing different methods of communication. So my own way of facilitating is, fairly easy in the sense that you are welcome totally to stop me if something is absolutely vital and you feel you need to say it immediately, and I will make space for that. Otherwise, put it in the chat and happy to curate it when we have a moment. Okay, and then as a participant, being present and in the moment, giving yourself the gift to stay in the session, and again, respecting others' ideas and viewpoints, and having the assurance that your ideas and viewpoints will be equally respected. So before I get into it, as also it's important for me to go through this with you and ask you to look one more time at what we are going to achieve during this session, right? And it is really important for you to know that for the India context, with Dr. Finch's permission, we have actually adapted this training to make sure that this training is most effective and most impactful for the area. So, the domains and the industries that we serve as a chapter member in India. And for those of you who are joining from maybe different countries in Asia or other parts of the world, you might also find this very relevant. So the idea is to connect, to talk about differences between cultural knowledge, awareness, and sensitivity, and then look at cultural proficiency. So you're going to look at two models, and those models will give you vocabulary to explain how you can be on a continuum of cultural sensitivity. And then we are going to talk about communication, because whenever you talk about any domain of wisdom or knowledge, then communication in our world becomes very important, and to look at it from the lens of communicating effectively. So if I have cultural proficiency, how would my communication look? So we're going to look at that. And then, of course, no ICF event would be incomplete if we didn't map it back to the single reason that we are all here. And that is that we map this, let's say, domain of knowledge, cultural competency, back to our core competencies, the things that we know really well, what we've been trained to do, and the reason that we are all here together, right? So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And when you look at the learning objectives, what comes up for you? Important for me to just take a moment and check in. I'm okay for you to put it in the chat or even unmute yourself. Take a moment, and anything that comes up for you in expectations that you might have had from this session that is not covered in the objectives, then this is a good time for you to put it in the chat or unmute and and share with me so I'm aware of it as I go through this training with you. Okay, so I don't see anything popping up in the chat, and I'm not hearing anybody unmute. So I'm assuming that everybody is good, and we continue with this with the
There
presentation.
is something coming up in the chat.
Okay, let's wait then.
There's a question which says, how do you navigate cultural differences in coach-client relationship?
Okay, great. We are going to definitely look at it. So you will have an opportunity to hear about it. Yeah, so that's covered. And again, whoever has that question, once we go through the presentation, if you still have more information you need, you can just come back.
Yeah? That's Santanu Sen-Gupta who raised this question.
Okay, we wait to hear from that. So I want to set the context, the additional context of what we tried to add to this training to make it impactful for our Mumbai chapter members, those who are operating out of India. And I want to make sure that those who don't operate out of here, this still remains inclusive because you will notice that it is probably very similar to your realities too. So let me go through this. The first context is that India is a polyglot country. And I mean, not to over explain, but polyglot is when you can understand and be accessible to 2 or 3 languages, it's considered being multilingual. But when you are proficient or can access up to 5 languages, that becomes a polyglot country, which is what we operate in. So it's really important for us to notice that when we are doing this cultural competency work, we can already see the nuances of cultural differences in India itself. And then when we come out into the larger world, so beyond the boundaries of the Indian diaspora in India, then you're going to see the same layers, but maybe in different lenses. So the first opportunity to exhibit cultural competency for those who operate as coaches in India is already available even before we cross the boundaries. So that was very important for us to make sure that this is not necessarily across national boundaries, that cultural differences can exist, and in India very obviously exist within our national boundaries. And I would take a dare and say that that's probably true in most countries of the world. So that cultural nuances actually exist within national boundaries too. Often when we have cultural conversations or cross-cultural conversations, it's a very shallow expectation that, we're talking about an Indian person and a German person, or so we're talking, and that's maybe at a very surface level. But when we start really examining competency or proficiency of culture, the nuances or the layers are much closer to home. So that's the first context. The second thing is that over the last decade, powered by the tech boom, the perception of Indian resources has shifted, right? So the way Indian coaches are now coaching into the world, and again, I because I serve the Mumbai chapter, my vocabulary is focused on Mumbai and India, but it's equally relevant to people who are here from different parts of the world. So my second context that I want to lay for you is that now the perception of Indian resources in the world has shifted. So Indian coaches are being asked more and more to step up to coaching in different domains or different forum that were not open to them maybe a few years ago. So this now gives you an additional context in which to look at cultural proficiency. As somebody operating out of India, the way you're viewed is shifting, and how you are going to respond to that and adjust to that is also, it requires awareness and sensitivity. And then the third thing is that in the end, whenever we have a new way or a new lens of looking at coaching, cultural competency being one, it's always important to remember that our understanding and our practice of core competencies always support us. And so we're going to take time to map the conversation we're going to have in the first half an hour to our core competencies so that you can become really clear that we're not really saying something new. We're giving ourselves additional vocabulary so that we can build those client relationships, so that we can work with different teams, so we can collaborate, cooperate much more efficiently, right? So these three contexts are really important because they give you a way of looking at the information that I'm going to share. Yes? Okay, so let's take 3 minutes. I mean, we can't start an ICF session without some reflection. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes, and it's not, I mean, you've already had a lot of thought, but after having this 5 or 7 minutes of talking that I've done, what are the two, three things that you want to take away from today's session? I would love it if people start sharing in the chat. Your time starts now, and then hopefully we can read out some of the inputs after 3 minutes. Take 1 more minute. And for those who are ready, please start sharing in the chat so I can have a read and maybe read out some of the informations. Okay, so something, okay, how to leverage cultural competency, different time zone respect, okay. That's a nice one. Avoiding cultural biases, understanding different cultures so we can become one global village. Yeah. Some tools or techniques to apply specifically in our coaching practice. Yes. Okay. How does one digest cultural nuances? Okay. How is intercultural competency manifested in the work of a coach? Kaira, this is a very important question, and I'm hoping that I'm going to speak directly to that for the next half an hour or so. How to become aware of and navigate conscious and unconscious biases as a coach towards the client personality, behavior, and communication. Sure, Ranganathan, very nice, very nice. Yeah. Review the cultural competencies are fresh, and which cultural competencies are relatively trending these times. So Anjan, I might disappoint you because this seems to be classic and timeless and not trendy. But hopefully we can. So I think we have enough. I mean, I've read out a few. I think we are speaking about similar things, and I also feel very confident that you're going to get your answers. Alessandro said, what strengths are present for ICF coaches in this domain? Fantastic. See, this is what happens when you have coaches on a session, right? I mean, you're prompting me and allowing me to immediately segue into the session. Fantastic. So stay with this and let's see. And I hope that at the end of 90 minutes, we tick off the boxes that you have set up here with your learnings. Yes. So I'm going to start by doing a little bit of a case study. And we are going to break you out into into a breakout room. Each breakout room will have 4 coaches. You're going to get 8 minutes, so you all have 2 minutes to share. And it's really important that all 4 people get time to share. So you need to have a timer or be very aware that you have 2 minutes, right? And make sure that your colleagues also have time to speak. But let me give you the situation. The situation is very simple. The coach's brief is that you have been signed on to coach in 20 countries, and you're going to coach 150 leaders across the world for the same company, right? And you're going to be flown out to these destinations over the next year and a half, and you're going to work with these leaders in clearly different cultural areas. So 20 coaches, 150 people, 150 leaders, 20 countries. This is your brief, right? And the question I'm asking you is, what would you as a coach do in preparation to make sure that you are culturally sensitive, culturally aware, culturally prepared to be able to create that client trust, that client relationship, so that the coaching conversation can happen? This is the brief. Does everybody, any questions about the brief? I'm going to stop sharing here for a minute. Any questions about the brief? And then I'll ask Nandini to set up the breakout rooms.
Kashmira, I think the ask is Shanti
My
Chandra says if the
network
case
was
can be
May I request you
case.
to repeat the brief, please?
I'm sorry, Shanti, I can't hear you.
She has a bad network, so she's wanting you to put the case up again, please.
Okay, so the case is that you have a project, a coaching project. You're going to coach 150 leaders in 20 countries. And the brief is, how are you going to prepare yourself with cultural awareness, tools, tips, so that you can go into these different cultural domains and work with these leaders, be able to establish effective client relationships and have coaching conversations. That's the brief, right? Shanti, did that land? I think maybe we lost Shanti. Okay, so
Clear.
can we have Nandini, can we set up the breakouts? Open the breakouts? Okay, let's do it. Okay, so welcome back from breakouts. I just want to tell you all that our own experience with sessions is breakout rooms are a little bit of a hit and a miss, because a lot of people sometimes step away from their cameras and they don't sign in. So some of you might have been in smaller groups than 4, but I do hope that everybody get an opportunity to have a conversation. We will also use, once everybody's back, we'll also have a debrief in the larger group. So just stay with us. Hey, welcome back. So we're going to take a few minutes. We have time. I mean, my idea is about 3 or 4 people maybe, or let's see how long we go. But anybody who wants to share into the larger room, any insights that you thought were really powerful, what would you do to prepare? Anything that came up that was new for you, you want to share, please unmute yourself. And for those who don't want to unmute and speak, you can also put it on the chat and we'll have somebody read it out.
Anup here. May I?
Yes. Hi, Anup.
Hi. So, I mean, we were having this discussion. The complexity that you put on the table is multiple clients, the same coach. While most of what we discussed is already a part of coaching practice, like, you know, having a chemistry session, trying to understand their ways of working, the thoughts that they have on their mind, the way they want us to be as a coach, warm, polite, challenging, nudging. What is it that their preference style would be? I think those all things are part and parcel of the coaching practice. What we also thought is, once you introduce a model, we will also get to know more about what we will prepare. Towards the end, we also kind of moved towards a direction where we felt that at a very high level, possibly looking at something like a Hofstede model, and then picking up cues from there as to someone from European region, how is it that they like to get into a communication, how they like to communicate, how they like to interact. America's region, Canada, America, Mexico, getting clubbed there. Asia region, China, India, Thailand, some portion there. So very high level, we can do some sort of a homework, but because their number of clients is very high, I think unless we are introduced to the framework, it's difficult to say which of these will be and how much of this preparation would be helpful.
Yeah, brilliant. So, Anup, I will summarize two things. One is that, the brief was vague. The brief actually could and needed to be more specific. So the brief you got was vague and maybe also a bit incomplete and deliberately so. And the second thing that I will take away from what you said is that you can always fall back on your core training as an ICF coach. The core competencies always hold good. And it's always nice to learn new models, which you're going to learn today. But in the absence of information, modeling curiosity, holding presence, asking powerful questions, dropping judgment. This always, all of these always hold true. So I think that's what I'm getting from Anup, and I'm also adding a little bit to that, and that makes a lot of sense and a lot of relevance. That in whether we talk about cultural competency in other with DEIB, sometimes we talk about inclusion, sometimes we talk about belonging, we talk about a whole spectrum of topics. And underlying, we always remember that the core competencies that ICF has set up is a very beautiful foundation to start on. Does that mean we don't continue an onward journey of awareness and training? Absolutely not. But were you constrained and you didn't have access to that, then using those foundational skills always holds good. So yeah, fantastic.
Couldn't agree more with this, Kashmira.
Yes.
And Adhir has raised his hand.
Yes.
We
Hi,
will-
Aditya.
Yeah, thank you so much, Priti, and thank you so much, Kashmira, for giving me this opportunity. I'm running a bad throat, so please bear with me, and my apologies for that. All right, in my room, we had Poonam, Kat, as well as Lata. In our conversation in the room, we were discussing about some of the preparation that we need to do before we take up this assignment. The number one was to figure it out whether these coaches are coming from a English-speaking nation or a non-English-speaking nation, because the speed of English in which they speak English is different, right? And some of the words they pronounce are going to be different. So I need to understand what is their background, right? How comfortable are they with the English language, and what's the kind of speed of spoken English that they are comfortable with. Number two is we need to also understand what is the level of hierarchy in their corporates in case they come from the corporate world, and what has been their experience in the past. And we have also discussing about the analysis of the coaches, their background. And then we went on to talk about what is the what are those cultural nuances that they're comfortable with? How do they wish each other, right? Whether it's a formal, informal. And we also need to get ourselves trained in about their culture of those different countries. How do they wish each other, right? Maybe I'll pick up some of the words of good morning and buy for them, so that I start off with a good morning in their own language. They feel very happy and comfortable when I wish them that way.
Okay. Adit, lovely. Yeah, you've spoken a lot to communication, verbal and non-verbal related to cultural proficiency. And we're going to cover that. And that's really powerful. So it's interesting that that already came up for you in your discussion, and that's very much on point. So to make sure that we keep our time, we are going to have time at the end, once I complete the presentation, to take more inputs from all of you. So you still have opportunity. Ranganath, you have written on chat, and everything you've written is, I'm going to stay there. I'm going to let it be. I'm not speaking to it. I'm going to proceed with the presentation, but I'm going to come back to it because you've said some very important things. And we will touch them as we go forward and we do additional reflection and sharing pieces, right? So one of the things that we always must balance is our commitment to time and also sharing. So allow me to, walk you through now a little bit of, oh, sorry, this is not what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted to do. Yeah. So what is culture then, right? And if you see, this is a sort of a dictionary definition of culture. But I want to share with what I have experienced, and as I prepared this training, as I got trained to deliver this training, what I took away from culture. So some of the things that are very obvious are some things that Adir spoke about, differences or groups of people who speak the same language, have similar rituals, norms, ways of functioning. all of that for sure creates cultural communities. But more and more, culture also is not defined only by gender, ethnicity, your passport, your language, your religion. It can also be the causes you're associated with, the ideologies, the institutions you're associated with. For example, we have an ICF coaching culture. And you know it very well that when you meet another ICF coach, there is an immediate relatability because you are speaking within similar frameworks, or you have a similar response to client delivery. So make sure that when you define culture for yourself, that you are able to go beyond the obvious layer of what is visible to us: dress, color, gender, religion, formats, rituals, ways of eating, to go deeper and see what do we identify with, and what are those identifications bringing us into common groups with. So culture can also be groups of similar contexts, similar ideologies, similar beliefs, right? This is also an excellent point. I don't know if Sarah DeBuscher is on this call, but if she is, she and I have, I mean, it's remiss of me not to, I should have acknowledged her straight off the bat. A lot of this work, when we first looked at this training, Sarah and I had many conversations with each other, with Dr. Finch, about decoding what is the best or the most authentic way of presenting this work to a group of coaches. And one of the things that she and I spoke about, and I want to present it to you, is that today's session hopefully is an eye opener. It's an awareness exercise, and that it invites you to set off on an ongoing journey. You cannot tick it off and say, oh, you know, we've received this training, so now I'm culturally proficient. It is an ongoing journey. It's an ongoing practice. It's an ongoing lens of awareness that we are constantly putting ourselves in a position that we stay sensitive and aware to culture. So this is really important when we define culture, that this is not a tick box exercise. This is not a one-time learning. It is something that you would continue to grow, evolve, and also personalize for yourself. Yeah. So this is the first model we are going to look at. And the model is actually, it's quite beautiful because as a coach, it's going to give you a very beautiful set of vocabulary that you can use in proposals, you can use in client interactions, you can use in pitches, in a way to explain why cultural competency is important. So cultural competency being the optimal state where you are, and you are surrounded by all people who are holding that complete awareness or complete ability to respond to the client regardless of any cultural differences or nuances. That would be the optimal stage. And so this is a continuum. By the way, you all will have access to the deck. So we will make it possible for you to have access to the deck. So if you want to then use it onward with your clients, we'll make these slides available to you, right? So I want to take it a little bit further and define each of these and take you through the continuum. Right? Oh, sorry. So when we speak about cultural knowledge, right, I'm going to give you a very simple analogy so that it becomes it becomes clear. I want to offer you this piece as something that you can use to explain to others what is the difference in behavior. So when we define the way we define culture, cultural knowledge is the first step. Cultural knowledge, so to give you an analogy, I go to a restaurant and I eat Italian food, right? This is now This is the first, so I eat it, I know how it tastes, I know how it looks, I know at an experience and intellectual level how Italian food looks, tastes, feels. This is cultural knowledge. And work with me on the analogy. When we get to cultural awareness, now I've started to get curious. What are the ingredients? What was the method of preparation? What were the steps? So what was the recipe? So if I'm eating a meal, what came first? What was the first course? So I am getting deeper in deconstructing that experience and breaking it down so that now I understand the components and how they all were built to work as a seamless experience. I got on my table a starter, a main dish, a dessert, maybe a side of something. But how was that all curated? Cultural awareness is understanding how all the pieces were put together. When we move to cultural sensitivity, we are going a bit beyond understanding how this was all put together. Cultural sensitivity now is about understanding the reason that certain ingredients were used. Why are we eating pasta in an Italian dish? Why are we eating certain spices in an Italian dish? What is the context? What was the story of the preparer? Where did this recipe come together? Why is tomato sauce paired with cheese? Why is certain ingredients excluded? Why would you never have curry paste in Italian food? So cultural sensitivity now is being able to put yourself in the shoes of the person who has done that preparation. So now you are starting to move to a point where you can feel the person who delivered the experience beyond the experience, right? And then the optimal level is actually a sum total of that. When you can bring together knowledge, awareness, and sensitivity, you are in cultural competency, right? I thought a lot of how to explain this, and this was the simplest analogy that I could share with you. But I want to make sure, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, and I'm going to ask, how did it land? Because ultimately I want to leave you with the message that when you're culturally competent, it means you're able to operate at all the levels as the situation demands, at the knowledge level, at the awareness level, at the sensitivity level, right? And you know what situation requires what and what is appropriate where. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to open the forum. Any questions? Did this analogy land? Do I need to explain this in any other way? So if it did land for you, if it made sense, I would love if I got a thumbs up, I got some feedback. Otherwise, I'm happy to stay with this because it's really important for coaches to understand that all four stages actually exist simultaneously. So it isn't like when you get to level 2, you've subsumed level 1. All of them will exist and you'll be able to play at all those levels as needed.
So you have very, in a very simple way, you have explained a very complex, what do I say, a complex concept, and it brought the different elements together. And for me, I think it's gone very well. Nothing could have been a better analogy for the different stages.
Thank you, Preeti. Let's see if we can, okay, so I have some, okay. I have some more, okay, Dexter, thank you. Chandramurti says it's landed. Okay, let me ask the opposite question. For anybody who still doesn't get it, who completely missed my analogy and thought that it was crap. So give me an opportunity then to play it again. Okay, are there things that he's aligned? Anybody, and it's really important because this is a co-created session. So if this did not land for you, or it felt that it needs more explanation for you, please, it would be lovely if you spoke up because then others will also benefit. Okay, I'm going to give it one more minute and then I'm going to take silence as Okay, Nivedita says simple and resonant example. Okay, so Shantanu, cultural competency is actually a amalgamation of all the three stages. So when you are reaching the point where you can go beyond the experience and start to feel the person delivering that experience. So you've actually, so for example, let's look at a cultural example, Shantanu. So if say somebody is, you have many cultures. I used to work in South America, and being up to 10 minutes, I mean, people in India will say this, up to 10 minutes late is considered being on time. This is a cultural, and I take really, I'm very careful to say these things, because to use absolute terms, because not everybody in these cultures are like that. But traditionally, culturally, time has a more stretchable uh, sense feeling in some cultures. And so if I was answering your question, Shantanu, to when you reach that point where you can see that somebody is not being disrespectful to you by being 10 minutes, consistently 10 minutes late, it's something that they need to be told about explicitly, which might not have to happen in other cultures. It would be assumed. So now you are able to go beyond that experience that, consistently this person is 10 minutes late, to be able to feel where that person is coming. So there's a sensitivity from where that person is coming. And so because you're reaching there, if you've reached that level and you've also played in knowledge and awareness levels, you are culturally competent. Does that make sense? And by the way, there is no exam, not an external person who's going to test you. This is really, like many things about coaching, you are your own assessor. Unless you put yourself in front of a coach and ask yourself to be assessed, mostly it's you who are going to judge. And how are you going to have the measure of success? Very simple. If your client is happy, you're successful. If somehow you're not able to break through, then you need to fix it. So I think that's the marketplace is a very digital response, and will immediately give you feedback if you are listening. Okay. Yes, Venkat, it is important. So let's keep going, and let's look at the next model. Right, the next model, which is the peak moment of this training, is the cultural competency continuum. And here too, we have made some adjustments, mainly, if you look at the standard template of this continuum, step number 3 used to be cultural blindness. We took that away, and we've replaced the word only to be inclusive, and to make sure that our language as we do these trainings are also inclusive and are not explicitly or implicitly biased. Yeah. So these are the 6 stages of the competency continuum. Yeah. And now to the question that Shantanu asked, we are the first model maybe was a simpler model. Now we've got even more granulation of how you can get to cultural proficiency. So we've gone beyond cultural competence to proficiency. Also, both the models are not stacked on top of each other. So don't look at the cultural competency there and put it here as level 5. These are 2 separate models to be looked at separately. Yeah. So these are the 6 stages, and here are the definitions. Oops. Oh, sorry, I went too fast. Yeah. Right. Cultural destructiveness is when there is very deliberate intention to cause, maybe harm is a very small sharp word, but to exclude or somehow marginalize a culture. So for example, if you have a holiday policy in a company which only celebrates the holidays of a certain religious culture or a religious community and does not make space for others, this is cultural destructiveness, right? And we are going to use coaching specific examples in a second. but I want to go through the definitions here, right? So there is a deliberate intention that we are unapologetically serving uh, a certain section of culture, and we are not really wanting to look at who is being excluded. Cultural incapacity is the next step up, that there is letter, but there is no implementation of that letter. So for example, a Mumbai chapter creates a policy about inclusion, but has no way, say it has a policy for braille, making everything accessible for those who are vision, who are vision challenged or vision impaired. And they have no way to actually implement that. So you don't have the technology, you don't have the ability. So you have a policy in place, but you don't, even if you have the intention, you do not have the resources or the method to implement those policies. This is cultural incapacity. So awareness is there, intention is there, but we still can't roll it out because we are not able to. Yeah. So that's the second stage. Cultural unawareness is now the next level, where you are have some policies in place, you have some awareness in place, but you're not even, you're not even um, having a conversation to continuously examine if you are excluding implicitly. So for example, I am aware and I would like to be inclusive, but when when I'm presenting, I'm facilitating, I'm using a word that is going to create some discomfort, and it happens. As a facilitator today, I'm surely going to have said 5, 6, 7 things that could have been culturally unaware. And the idea is not for reaching perfection, but to continuously seek feedback, to continue to learn, to continually be in conversation, so that that can be brought to my notice. So for example, if I'd used the word blindness instead of unawareness, right? That would have definitely been a straight out miss. And this is exactly what happened. And somebody, in this case, Sarah, brought it to our notice that, you know what, this word is not inclusive. And so we were able to shift it. So unawareness is where you have the intention, where you do not know, or you are not prepared to continually update. And this is what I want to stop and remind all my coaches. You can never pat yourself on the back and say, now I am certified culturally proficient. This is something that you're going to have to look at on an ongoing basis. You're going to have to model curiosity. You have to continuously ask questions. Please feed me back. Can I do better? Is there anything I'm missing? What did I miss? Are you sure this was okay? So opening and making yourself open to feedback and open to learning is the only remedy or answer to cultural unawareness. In that sense, it's not one step in the continuum. In my understanding, you're always living there, and you're constantly coming out of unawareness to awareness on one topic, and then you have so many more layers to unpeel, right? Next, cultural pre-competence. And here I'm going to say that, you are now starting to become, so you're not still in competence because you are still not signed off on 100%, one, awareness, and two, ability to roll out the initiatives that you've designed. So cultural pre-competence, cultural competence are literally stages of implementation. So anybody here who's ever run a project, or if you're ever doing a task, when you are in progress, you are going naturally through the pre-competence and competence stage, because you are slowly starting to get better and better at at addressing diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging. And then now we're talking about justice, right? I mean, DEIB is starting to expand into, I mean, you start to see it as trainings roll out in this domain in 25, you start to see more and more the emergence of this idea of justice added to the DEIB conversation. So when an organization, a group of people, you individually as a coach, begin to have systems and processes in place to continuously grow and address cultural nuances and layers, you are in cultural pre-competence and pre-competence stage. Again, cultural proficiency is an optimal stage. I think Uta, maybe you wrote it in the in the in the beginning of the session that we need to step up to this so we can be one global village. And that is the optimal level. And I'd like to say, that today it seems like that is, how you say that all lines meet in infinity. It seems like a faraway dream. My own experience with this is that in any engagement as a coach, we do notice moments or periods where we naturally step into cultural proficiency, where it seems like a group full of people have merged into one unity and everybody is feeling that, may I say the word, feeling the love, right? So cultural proficiency is a state that we periodically step into, and unfortunately we periodically step out of and come back to unawareness, and then we climb this journey again and again, right? So I have an example to walk you through, which is a coaching example. But before I do, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to ask again, how is this going? This is the peak model of this training. So I want to make sure that uh, it has landed. So please unmute yourself and ask if you have any questions. I'm going to walk you through a coaching specific example in a minute, but tell me if this is landing so far. I have some comments I'm going to read out. Anjan says, I like this construct. Sarah says, Sarah, hello. Sarah is somebody I've seen as a collaborator and has some very deep sensitivity about this topic. Indeed, as the language evolves constantly, absolutely. So language is evolving, and so we can never find ourselves in optimal state. We are on, this is a journey. And as long as we commit to that continuous process, we are sort of roughly right with each other. Yeah, it is complex for humans to interact with humans in trust and harmony. So this being a continuous process that we engage ourselves in can support that possibility that we connect as human beings across all and every nuance, layer, difference, right? So any questions? Silence on the chat, silence in the room. Yeah, Kathleen says meeting of minds and heart, not easy, but can be done. Absolutely. And may I also say that coaches have a great opportunity to facilitate and begin these conversations. And this is a great invitation to you as coaches to be ambassadors of this proficiency, to be ambassadors of this meeting of mind and hearts. Kathleen beautifully put. And I'll add another layer, meeting of minds, hearts, and beings, right? This is possible, and we can be forerunners in this possibility. Yeah, so I'm not seeing much on the chat. I don't see people speaking, so I'm going to walk you through a coaching example and see what you think, right? This is a coaching example. The coaching example is you have a coaching project. Cultural destructiveness would be a coaching project brief that explicitly favors or excludes participation based on an aspect of cultural identity. For those of you who coach in India, you know this. Sometimes you get a client brief that says, we only want male coaches. We only want coaches above the age of something. We only want coaches who are, who have 10 years of experience. All of this is cultural destructiveness, and needs to really be at the chapter in Mumbai. We take it very, very seriously. No such messages are actually seen on our community chats, and we are immediately called out. And the messages from wherever they are coming, we always feed back to the client that they can do better in the way they are sending out project briefs. So this is a very simple example, and maybe it'll resonate with some here. Okay, the second thing is, thank you, Dr. Finch. Thank you, Akena. It means a lot. The second one, cultural incapacity. So the coaching project brief clearly states its inclusion policy is unable to enforce or implement it. Again, you've seen the standard documents when you get coaching briefs. It has everything. You know what the Americans say, what do they say? Mom, apple pie, and country. It has everything, but there is no teeth behind it. So in the end, when coaches are chosen for the project, it is still done in traditional methods that are not inclusive. So the letter doesn't become the law, right? And this is something, again, we coaches see all the time. Cultural unawareness. When you have a coaching project brief that says, you know what, we will be shut from 15th of December to the 1st of January for Christmas break. This is cultural unawareness, because it's not badly meant. There's no intention. Depending on where it is, that is the majority celebration, and that's completely okay. But adding some language to it could have made it inclusive. That for those who are not observing, have a wonderful winter break or have an end of the year break. Something could have been added to it to ensure that it sounded inclusive and ensured that any person reading it did not walk away feeling disappointed. So that's cultural awareness. Cultural pre-competence. A coaching project brief offers special consideration to a cultural identity overriding merit. The need for it, or even any takers. So now we are really gung-ho. We want to give 20% of the work to people who are fresh coaches, anybody who is under 1 year experience. We want to give it to them. We didn't check if anybody wants it, if there are any takers for it, or whether we are overriding merit. By creating that clause, are we actually then affecting the overall process of awarding this work based on merit? So here is something that's very enthusiastic, right intention, but ends up not being very effective. So you're on the journey towards proficiency, but you're making some mistakes. It's still better than exclusion, but you can see it's not still totally set up. Cultural competency looks like a questionnaire, asking for feedback and pain points, and then creating a coaching brief based on that feedback, and then being open to evolving and amending the coaching brief based on the feedback and based on conversations. That is what cultural competence looks like. And then finally, we look at proficiency. And again, we do have moments where we experience this as coaches, where there is an ongoing dialogue. So even after awarding of projects, even when the project is underway, there's always a possibility of having meaningful conversations, of having dialogue, of making changes, of fixing, of doing better, of evolving, and having transparent award processes. So this is the coaching example. I'm going to stop here. And I'm going to ask again, how did it land? We are slowly drawing to a close. So how does this coaching example and putting it on the continuum, how does this land for you? Okay, thank you, Rupinder. Yeah, Shanti says, very helpful, clarifies a lot. So let's do this. Let's really get into some reflection. Where are you on this CC? This is a moment, this is private, nobody's looking at your answer. Ask yourself, when you show up as a coach, or if you are somebody who prepares project briefs, or somebody who responds to briefs, or somebody who collaborates, where do you think you are on this competency? And by the way, it's completely okay to be in multiple places on the continuum at the same time. Maybe on certain layers, you are in different places, and that's also okay. So take a moment, make a note, because this is then the beginning of your journey. And I will ask you to reflect on 2 points. Where do you think you are? And 2, what would be the benefit for you to get some validation of that? So maybe I think I'm 3. What can I do to get good, solid feedback? That would be really helpful, because then you will get a 360-degree validation of your place on the continuum and gives you a starting point on any growth possibility. Because the idea of any session at a ICF forum is, 1, to create awareness, and 2, propel you to growth and deeper sensitivity. I mean, and I'm hoping that once you can peg yourself or say to yourself, this is where I live, then it gives you a place to move forward from. And as honest as you are, and as complete as your assessment, I think that in proportion will be your growth or your ability to learn. Yeah. Yeah. Some of you are sharing which stage you are in, and that's fine. I'm going to, I'm very aware that we're going to end at 7:30, and we will. What I want to switch quickly to is, okay, so here is this question. So I asked you both the questions together. 1 is, where are you on this continuum? And 2, what can you do to move to the next level, right? You can see the group activity on the top. We're not going to do it as a group activity. I would like you to do it as a personal reflection. What can you do to move to the next level? What we can offer at Mumbai chapter is, Preeti Gupta is our director DEIB, and through the year we offer multiple opportunities for you to engage in that growth process. So she will, and her team will be putting out a whole calendar in 25. And if you have any personal requests, you can always reach out to her. The way to find Preeti, we'll put the emails in the chat, and she'll be happy to hear from you. And you will also be hearing from her and a team in 25. So that is the one way we can support you. But there are so many resources. Dr. Finch is here. We have an ICF commitment at a global level. So there are so many programs. I know she is working on a 2025 version of this. So lots happening. And for those of you who are curious, you're in the right place. We got you. Okay, so I want to spend the next 5 minutes talking about communication. So the 2 models we looked at, one was the proficiency model and the continuum. Those are both hopefully great takeaways for you to have conversations with your teams, your clients, and vocabulary to use as you grow on the spectrum, right? Communication, though, is key in the world we live in, and for coaches, it is the seminal or the master skill. So let's talk about communication, right? Again, some definitions. You're going to see this. I'm not going to read out the slide. What I want to look at, though, is what are the benefits of cultural awareness in your communication. When your communication reflects your cultural awareness, here are the benefits. And I'd like to believe that there's nobody in this forum who is looking at this list and saying, oh, I've never heard this before. But for those of you who find some of these new, straight off, and let me just, show me the money, as Tom Cruise famously said in some movie. Cultural awareness in your language and in your mindset and in the way you operate is going to translate to greater coaching opportunities, greater revenue, greater ability to do impactful projects, greater ability to move to a global coaching environment. And I hope that's motivation enough. There's the intrinsic motivation of showing up as a better coach, and then this is the external motivation, right? So what can be considered communication? This is the model that I absolutely love. It's by this gentleman called Albert Mehrabian, who himself has a very interesting history. He grew up, was born in an Armenian family who lived in Iran, immigrated to America, and did some groundbreaking work with communication. And this is really, hopefully, as I show it to you, hopefully immediately gets your attention. 55 plus 38. So 93% of your communication is not in the words you speak. And this is no different when you are being culturally sensitive. Before you open your mouth, the opposite person already can feel your sensitivity. So this is not something, coaches, that we can fake. Either you have it or you don't. So putting in the effort and switching on that awareness is really, really important, right? So I cannot stress enough, 93% of how you set yourself up is not in the words you speak. So that can be practiced, but how you show up is completely a reflection of what you've imbibed. So again, another motivation of becoming engaged in inclusion learning, in making that a part of who you are as a coach. Okay. I'm going to ask you to do this as an activity, but we are going to do it. Preeti, I want to actually do this to the end because of I'm looking at the clock and I want to make sure that we stay on time. So what I would like to do is I would like to ask you to jot down what constitutes a cultural different environment for you. Just jot it down. We'll do the activity at the end after I complete the learning, so we can stay on track with time, right? And then we can get the FAQs and all of that in one shot at the end. Preeti, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So take a moment and just write it down. What constitutes a culturally different environment for you? Is it another nationality? Is it another language? Is it a very tech savvy group because you feel like you are not so on top of technology? What is a culturally different environment for you that is very relevant to your coaching practice? Right? Coaching another generation, is that culturally different for you? What is it that feels very culturally different for you? And as you're writing that down, I want to show you what hopefully is very, very familiar to you, the ICF core competencies. And we looked at two models, cultural competency, the continuum. I showed you the Albert Mehrabian model. Look at how everything we've spoken to today can be very simply mapped to our 8 core competencies. We've applied new vocabulary, but we've really not applied new understanding. Right? We talked about modeling curiosity. This is listening actively. This is coaching mindset, open, curious, flexible, client-centered, right? But none of anything that I have spoken in the last hour or so, none of it is not already mapped here. And that is really the beauty of this ICF model, that when we go through and look at different lenses, we can always come back and remind ourselves we need to tie the new vocabulary we learned to the fundamentals we already know. It's not overwhelming them. This is our bread, butter, jam, sugar, everything. We know this. This is what makes us coaches. And all we now need to do is add that lens, add that vocabulary, add those set of questions. So when we are looking at asking for, we add those set of questions. Be curious about cultural sensitivity. It's an additional layer. It's not brand new information. And this is why where I want to also close this. And this is really, if Sarah, if you're on this call, shout out to you. We co-created this. If I want to leave you with this is what I want to leave you with. At the back end of showing you the competencies, this is the takeaway. As a facilitator, this is the takeaway. One, if you can understand that this is not a tick the box activity, it's an ongoing practice. Just like you get certified and recertified every year with your coaching, this is the same thing. When in doubt, begin with the basics. And two, engage in learning experience opportunities. Don't pass up. Show up for the sessions. I mean, start with the ones at the chapter here. This is where I end the slide deck part of this session today. What I wanted to do was, if time permits, I think we won't have time for one more activity. So I just want to, it's 7:26. Can we agree on this? If we can get thumbs up, can we, Preeti, do the photograph, the link, all of that? And then, because we started 10 minutes beyond, can we leave the last 10 minutes for questions? So from 7:30, we leave the last 10 minutes for questions. And for those who absolutely have hard stops, then they can go.
Yeah,
But then you can get your hygiene stuff done.
Yeah. So I think we will have a group photo. We will post the CCU link for the benefit of everybody and a feedback poll.
Yeah.
And post that we can open it for Q&A.
Okay, perfect.
So Nandini, can you just do the needful?
Cameras on, people.
Yes,
Big
cameras
smiles.
on. Everybody cameras on. Can you stop presenting? Have you stopped?
I stopped.
Okay.
Just give me a moment, please.
Sarah, we'll miss you.
Just one more time.
I know, I'm so sorry, Kashmira. My camera is off and I need to
Sarah,
reboot my laptop and
I
don't
expected
get
you
there.
to be here in a sari, and I'm sorry, but I'm just disappointed. So,
I will reboot my laptop,
are
I
done.
promise. After
Thank
this
you so much,
session.
everyone. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
so we have feedback poll and link
CCU
to
link.
this. Good.
And thank you very much, Kashmira, for this insightful session, unpacking things in such simple and relatable way. And I invite Anne, sorry, to take this forward, and she will go ahead with the Q&A segment. And
Yes, sure. So I'll request everybody to put in your questions or your comments on that one learning that you take away today in the chat session. And while they do that, of course, Kashmira, I wanted to also say thank you for the session. I mean, I'm sure all of us have, like me, everybody's taken back insights on the entire competency continuum and the whole landscape of opportunity that it brings for us.
So Kashmira, while people are writing in their questions, if they have any, on
Yes,
the
I'm looking at that.
culturally environment look for you, do you want to open it up in the main room and have people talk about it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, really, we have 10 minutes, and what I'm hoping is, one, anything that you want to share, but what I'm very curious to hear, because this allows us to prepare for 25, because for us also, this is a journey, is, did we miss anything? Did you come with something that we just didn't look at? please let us know, right? And that is really valuable to us because that's how we all get better collectively. And of course, yes, tell us also if you have, what do you consider culturally different? What do you get challenged by currently? Any questions of me? Anything that I explained that didn't land and I can add some more value to that? You know, the forum is open. I'm going to stay till 7:40, and I'm really happy to answer your questions. But at ICF Mumbai, we're always careful that some people have hard stops. So we like to complete the official session on time, and then we give you, and I'm here available and ask your questions. Over to you.
The CCU link has been put up on the chat screen.
Thank you.
So others who have questions or have feedback, if you can put your comments in the chat window.
Thank you for all your kind words, for your gratitude. It's actually our pleasure. This is a chapter event, and it just gives us all, Preeti and Nandini, the whole team, all of us, so much pleasure to do this. And we're so touched that we have coaches from all over the world joining. So it'd be very nice to hear from those who are joining from, you know, other chapters. How did this land? Did this seem relevant? Anything you'd like to share?
Tara has a hand up.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Kashmira, first of all, I wanted to thank you for making the session so inclusive and so nice. And again, apologize, I can't come on camera because my camera doesn't work. What I sometimes hear in these sessions is, like you said, right, people think it's a check in the box. It's kind of, you know, now I have learned it and now I feel ready. And yesterday I was in another session regarding DEI, exactly this, right, with coaches. And some of the things that came out was that coaches said, you know what, let me do like for 6 months a few of DEI sessions, and maybe then I will feel ready to speak to those people, right? And that was a very interesting comment for me. And I tried asking, like, what do you mean, those people, right? And it's something I wanted to post here also. I wanted to ask, when will people feel ready, if at all, or do people feel comfortable right now to discuss DEI or to include DEI in their coaching practice right now? Or is there this thought of, no, you know, I need first to do 6 months and then only? I just wanted to post that question, or your view on it. Would appreciate.
Yeah. So Sarah, you and I've had long discussions about this, right? And what I feel though is that by and large people have really the right. I mean, we rarely meet or bump into a coach in our community who isn't open-hearted about this. But I think we still need to embrace the uncomfortable conversation, Sarah. And I think there is still reluctance to do that. So to your point, I think that there are two things. One is to be ready to be challenged, and to also you know, to also accept diversity in that, right? That everybody is going to come to an understanding from their own viewpoint and in their own time. I don't know. I mean, as I've prepared for this, and I was, you know, when we went through the training for this, Sarah, I'm starting to create so much compassion for all of us, including myself, that I think most of us are doing the best we can. And we, as long as we sign up to continue doing that and admitting that we are not perfect, I think we sort of hobble together along, you know, as long as we take each other along. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know if
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
too
And
dismissive, but I feel like that's the
no,
best
no.
answer I have there, you know, because mm, it's so ingrained. The bias is so ingrained in communication. Our language is constructed
Yes.
to be biased. So for us, the only way is conversation. For me to keep asking, hey, did I do okay? Did I do okay? And, you know, can I do better for you? Can I do better for you? Not you as the world, but you, Preeti. Did I do okay with you? Can I do better? And you know, the very famous thing, sorry, thank you, and I love you. I think,
And I think that's point on. That's exactly what I was
Yes.
hoping to hear, Kashmira, because it helps people understand. It helps us understand that it's fine, right?
Yes.
Whatever happens is
Yes.
fine, and that is true acceptance. Absolutely. Thank you so much for this.
A beautiful short conversation between you and Sarah. And Kashmira, we have Ashok Iyer who wants to just share some real life example of cultural awareness. So do we
Yes.
have time? Do you think we can?
Yes. Before we go to Ashok, absolutely. Thank you, Uta, for showing up and for being so engaged. I could actually see your video and I could just see how much you were in this session. So I appreciate that. Ashok, before I open the floor to you, I want to make sure that if there's anybody who has questions on the presentation, we do that. And then Ashok, we're happy to let you share, right? So any other last questions? Because Ashok sharing will literally be the end of this session. So, so before that, I want to make sure if we have any questions about the presentation that I take that. Yeah. No, yeah. We're good? Okay. So over to you, Ashok, share.
Thank you, Kashmira. Thank you, Preeti. It's a 1 minute share and a real life experience. I was given an assignment in the West Indies, the Caribbean. I was hardly 2 weeks old since I took up that assignment as the CEO. There was an export consignment that had to be sent out in a matter of days. And I came from a culture that is typically subcontinent and Middle East. I issued instructions. Mark my words, I issued instructions that it could be done, and I was willing to consider a financial incentive for overtime. The production head came up to me. He says, technically, sir, we can do the work, but I need to discuss with the people. And he went back and then came back again and he says, with all due respect, sir, you are hardly 2 weeks in this organization. We look at things a little differently. Financial incentives alone do not matter in life. And we have our balance between work and life. So most people are saying that they thank you for having looked at providing an incentive, but they're not prepared to work on the order. Now, I reflected. I think this gentleman who is reporting to me was a good coach. And if I were to review and ask questions differently, I would have probably called him over and says, this is the goal that we have. How do you think we can do this? What are the challenges that we can overcome? And I require your support. This is the learning that I had. Thank you for listening.
Very powerful, Ashok. And so interesting. I mean, I wish we had 3 hours for this, Preeti, isn't it? Because I'm sure all of you have
All of us.
wonderful examples. But that is the nature of the work we do. We always we are connected forever, and yet we operate on timelines. So I want to give a special shout out to. I mean, really, I'm just so touched because as we prepare this entire activity, Preeti has been just so spot on. Preeti, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you. And always Nandini. And it has been a pleasure to represent the chapter and to present to the chapter. And of course, as I realized, to a large part of the world. So thank you so much. Keep coming back, keep learning. And we welcome you at the next session of the Mumbai chapter soon.
Thank you so much, Kashmira, for this beautiful, engaging session. And we all taking away something that connected, resonated very deeply with each one of us. And I'm sure we're going to bring it into practice and try to move different levels, one level up. As you said, we are all a work in progress. It is a journey. That is the most important thing that we need to remember. So take everybody along and a loving place, a happy place. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Finch.
Dr. Finch, for
We
being
love
with
you.
us.
Thank you for your support. Thank you.